यहाँ पर इंट्रोडक्शन टू 18th century. सब लोग को प्रॉपर फोकस करना है. 1 घंटा हम लोग बातचीत करेंगे 18th century. बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट डिस्कशन होगा हमारा. So 18th century, first of all, dear learners, we know that so this is an experiment that I am going to do in this class. Going to tell everything in English. I will not use the word of Hindi here because it's going to be an important class and we are students of English literature. So let's do an experiment and let's try to understand what are the basic trends of the 18th century English literature. So if we look at 18th century, broadly speaking, we can divide this into two halves. This you can do along with me, whatever I am doing. That is the first half from 1701 to 1744. This is the first half of, you can say, 18th century. And the second half is from 1744 to 1785. 1744 to 1785. This is the second half of, you can say, 18th century, right? So we can divide this century into two names. First is the legendary Alexander Pope. So we call it as Age of Pope. And the second half of 18th century is the Age of Johnson, another legend of 18th century. So we can say Age of Pope and Age of Johnson. For those who are getting a kind of shadow on the board, I am just naming the writer because the shadow is coming on the, not exactly shadow, a kind of light is coming on the board. So the answer is, so this word that I have written, I am writing it, should I say rewriting it again here, that is Johnson. So I am talking about Dr. Johnson. Just for the beginners, do understand that there are two Johnsons. One is Ben Johnson and the second one is Dr. Johnson. So Ben Johnson is Jon. The spelling is Jonson. And here, if we include H here, that is Dr. Johnson, then he becomes a writer of second half of 18th century. I have already discussed it, that he was one of the most important lexicographers of English literature. In my yesterday's lecture, I touched upon this topic that Dr. Johnson wrote rather the first authoritative dictionary of English literature, which came in the year 1755. All right. So this is the same Dr. Johnson we are talking about. All right. So let us come back to the topic again. The first half of 18th century, dear learners, is known by various other names also. The other name is, you can say, Augustan age. It's also called as Augustan age. Now this nomenclature is very important, Augustan. Okay, why do we call it as Augustan age? This is very important. So it is Augustan, Augustan age. And Augustan age is basically, the name is inspired from a Roman king called as King Augustus. Who was the original king? King Augustus. He was a Roman king and his name was King Augustus. Augustus. In fact, if you are a learner of English language, you will know that August beginnings. There is a word in English by his name, August, which means auspicious. August means auspicious. All right. So you can say, so there is a name that is derived from his, you can say, name August. So King, and we know there is a month, of course, August month. So we can say King Augustus, Augustan age, is derived from this name called King Augustus, who was actually a Roman king. He was a Roman king actually. And that is why under the reign of King Augustus, that is the Roman king, there prospered three great writers: Ovid, Virgil, Horace. Ovid, Virgil, Horace. So these three legends of classical literature prospered under the reign of King August or King Augustus. And in the first half of 18th century, writers like Pope imitated these three great writers. And that's why the name came Augustan age. So the Augustan age name came because these writers imitated the writers of the King Augustus, Rheims, and these three writers were Ovid, Virgil, and Horace. Most important of all the three was Horace. Okay, Horace was a very important writer. So we can call these three writers as, what do we call these writers as? Classical writers. These were the three writers who were called as classical writers, right? So classical means, please understand here the word classical. Whenever I use the word classical, what does it suggest? It actually means two things. One is timeless. If a question comes in your exam, what do you mean by the word classical in literature? You will say that, sir, the one meaning is timeless. That is any work which has the significance even beyond the time when it was written. So timeless, yes. We can say the classical literature is a literature that is beyond time and space. And the second meaning is following rules and regulations. That is the second meaning of classical word in literature. Classical means anything that follows rules and regulations. We say classical dance, classical music, Bharatanatyam, all these are classical music. So a classical dance. So anything which follows rules and regulation is classical, and anything which is even popular after the time zone in which it was written is also classical, right? So let's move on to this topic again. So that's why the Augustan age was named, because these writers were imitated. So you can write here, it was called as Augustan age because the English authors, you can write here only, it was called as Augustan age because English, just write this point only, that English authors imitated. Imitation is the most important word in the 18th century. Okay, imitation. They were always imitating. That's why they were artificial. They were not original. Okay, so English authors imitated the classical authors. English authors imitated the classical authors. That's why this name is given, Augustan. All right. So the first half of 18th century is called as Age of Pope. It's called as Augustan age. I have given you a brief explanation why it was called as Augustan age. Now, the third name of this first half of 18th century was Age of Prose, because prose mainly developed in this age, so we can call it as Age of Prose. Very important. So this is the third name that we give to this age of prose. Now, when I talk about prose, please keep in mind there are two features of prose. This is a revision for those who have missed the earlier classes. Prose essentially means one thing is extended written composition. Anything which is extended, which is not just a sentence, it is extended. So extended written composition is called as prose. And the second feature of prose is, so first is extended written composition, or I am just writing the word extended just for your information. And the second feature of any prose is, can anyone tell me in the class offline? What is the second feature of prose? Non-metric. Very good. So prose has to be non-metrical. That means prose should not include meters. Prose should not, non means not included, and meter, you know, meter is arrangement of syllables. So any written composition which is extended and which does not use meter will be called as prose. Now, a very interesting thing I am sharing with you all, that the biggest writer of the first half was Pope, and when Pope was writing his prose, actually he was writing it in meter only. His one of the greatest work was an essay in criticism, which was published in 1711. And this work actually was written in meter. That is called as heroic couplet. Now, please pay attention here that why did he use it? We are saying that in prose, there is no use of meter. And here is Pope, the biggest writer of the age. He's writing his prose in poetry. Why was he doing it? What was the reason? The answer is because he was imitating the classical authors. Classical authors of Roman literature wrote their prose in meter. And that's why Pope was also writing his prose in meter. But the general definition of prose is that it has to be non-metrical. So please remember the question. They have asked this question various times that Pope's essay in criticism, is it an essay? Is it a verse? So the answer would be verse. V-E-R-S-E. Okay, verse means anything which is written in meter. We'll come to that topic, but please keep this mind that although they were the prose writers, but some of the works were not written in prose. They included meters because the classical writers also do in meters. Clear? So this is the age of prose, we say. But prose does not necessarily mean you can say prose in poetry. Prose actually, we know that prose means non-fiction and fiction. So this was the age of essays. The two great essayists of English literature were forming their base here, and they were Addison and Steele. They were called as the prose reformers of 18th century. The foundation was laid in the earlier age by Dryden. I have discussed that Dryden was the father of modern prose, but that foundation was built upon by Addison and Steele. So we will write these writers in detail, but just giving you a cursory overview. So next, moving on to this age, the second half. So these are the broadly speaking the three ages. Okay. Now moving on to the second half, that is the age of Johnson. That is the second half of 18th century. We come here with different names also. In this class, I'm going to give you names only. And the purpose of class is to enjoy, is to understand, and to appreciate the literature. That's the purpose of any literary class. Okay. So try to understand, appreciate, and enjoy. That's the main thing. So, sorry, I don't have to use the word. So, I said that age of Johnson. So, the second name of this age is, you can say, age of enlightenment. Enlightenment is going to be the most happening word in the second half, or was the most happening word of the second half, enlightenment. Age of enlightenment, right? So, enlightenment, dear learners, is actually an intellectual movement. Intellectual movement. Okay, it's a social intellectual movement which reacted against the religion. And as I have discussed with you once in my earlier lectures, it actually tells or focuses more on reason over religion. So, what's the one-line slogan for enlightenment? Age of enlightenment is reason over religion. That's the main point. Reason over religion. So enlightenment focused on reason and gave primary importance to reason over religion. All right. We can also say reason over revelation. Revelation means to manifest, to appear. In this age, the biggest myth was busted. And what was the biggest myth in Christianity? That Jesus appeared directly. Okay. So there was no, relationship formed when Jesus Christ appeared. So that myth, that means he manifested. So that was a, you can say, religious faith of Christians, which was shattered here. And famously, it was declared that Jesus was also one of us. There's a line that appeared in Enlightenment. The slogan appeared in this Enlightenment that Jesus was also one of us. That means that Jesus was not a miracle man. He did not appear from nowhere. He was one of us. That means he also appeared through the normal process of, being in the womb for 9 months and then, getting, being born. So that is, and most importantly, in this age, we see various social reformers. So this age is Enlightenment word I am talking about is famously called as the third wave of Renaissance. Okay, Enlightenment is also called as third wave of Renaissance. Third wave of Renaissance. So just to catch up with the first two waves, the first wave was called as Renaissance only, appeared in the age of Chaucer and culminated in Shakespeare. We called that as flowering of Renaissance. That was the first wave. Second wave appeared in 17th century, Milton and Dryden. We call it as Puritanism. What do we call it as? Puritanism. Puritan movement is the second wave of Renaissance, and third wave of Renaissance is Enlightenment. Okay, so Enlightenment, actually, this is a very technical question. They may ask you how it was different from, you can say, first wave, because in first wave also there were many social consciousness, cultural consciousness works were being written. So the answer is, because Puritanism is a very simple thing. Puritanism is purely religious movement where they purified the Christian beliefs. Protestants appeared. But the difference, this is a very important point, the difference between the first wave and the third wave was that in first wave, there was, the focus was on humanitarian values. Okay. And in third wave, the focus was on reason, logic, science. So that's the very important point that I'm going to tell you. I'm telling you all that in first wave, the focus was on developing the humanitarian values. And in the third wave, that is Enlightenment, the focus is on developing reason, logic, and science. So there is a shift in the attitude. Okay. So let's come back to the names, age of Johnson. Second is age of Enlightenment. And the third is age of reason. What is the third name of the same age? That is age of reason. Age of reason. The word reason again, as I have told you, represents logic. And also, please do pay attention to what I'm saying here. The word reason has two meanings here. One is, you can say, logic, or should I say logic, science. Okay. The second is, very importantly, the word reason also develops or highlights at the development of criticism. Criticism as a literary phenomenon. So we see here that the development of criticism under the able hands of Dr. Johnson happened. Okay, so criticism as a developed movement, criticism as a separate branch of study started by Dryden, is getting to its bloom in this age of Johnson, especially, please write down this term, biographical criticism. In criticism also, what kind of criticism appeared? Biographical criticism. So one-liner, simple one-liner question will come that who is the father of biographical criticism? So we can write Dr. Johnson. Focus was more on developing the biographies of the author. Biographical criticism. So during this, so as I have told you that the first half was age of Pope and the second half was age of Johnson. So you can say that there were two major pillars of the 18th century. The first half was Pope and the second half was Dr. Johnson. This we have already noted. Now moving on, there was something happening in between also. Okay, between the two ages, there was, lots of movements that were flourishing in the 18th century. Because in today's class, I am just going to give the names of the movements only and going to make it competitively relevant. So that's why I am going to name you or name some of the movements in front of you that appeared. So the first half is Pope, second is Johnson. Let's come in between. What was in between? Okay, so the first you can write here the heading as mid 18th century. This you can make in that graph only where you are developing, or else you can make a separate graph, a separate chart. So Johnson, mid 18th century. Okay. So mid 18th century, what was happening? The first thing that was happening here was development of novels. We call it four wheels of novels. Very, very important question. Four wheels of novels. Wheels, you know. Okay. Four wheels of novels. They appeared in the mid 18th century. WHEELS. Four wheels of novels. So they are famously called as, there is an acronym for that, RFS square. The short code for all of you to remember, RFS square. Four wheels. So what is R here? Richardson, the first author to write the first English novel, Richardson. Then F is Fielding. In some of the books, Fielding is mentioned as the father of English novels, of course, because of his extraordinary contribution to development of English novels. S is Smollett, and the second S is Stern. So here are the big four. Fab Four we call them as Fab Four, FAB. Fabulous Four. Richardson, Fielding, Smollett, and Stern. These are called as the Fabulous Four or quadrates of English novels. So now Richardson is known for bringing the epistolary novel. He is known as the father of epistolary novel. Epistolary, I am writing here in capital EPISTOLARY. The word is very, very important. They have been asking question like anything from this topic. Epistolary. Now the word epistolary means epistle. And what is epistle? What is an epistle? Letter. Letter format. When the novel is written in the form of a letter. Letter, you know, in Hindi we call it as chitti wala letter. So letter format, any novel which is written in the format of a letter will be called as epistle. The traditional word for letter is epistle, EPISTLE. So epistle, from epistle we have made epistolary as an adjective, and that is what we call the novel written in the form of a letter. So what used to happen here in this novel, especially if I talk about Richardson's Pamela, that is the first official English novel, Pamela, which appeared in 1740. Pamela appeared in 1740. Here in this novel, you see the exchange of letters happening between the characters. That means the characters are shown as if they are writing a letter to another character. And in that way, the story advances. Okay, so the story takes the form of a letter, and through letter exchange, so they may ask you question in any way possible. They may say that, okay, tell us that form of a novel in which letters are exchanged through the characters. They may ask you what is the meaning of epistolary. They may ask you that who is the father of epistolary novel. Okay, Richardson. And most importantly, they may ask you that which was the first English novel of English literature. So the answer would be Pamela. The first English novel was written, officially the first English novel was written by Richardson, and the name of the novel was Pamela. Very important. And the subtitle is Virtue Rewarded. Pamela or Virtue Rewarded. This is the subtitle of Pamela. Pamela or Virtue Rewarded. Who is going to tell me the technical name for subtitle? What do we call subtitle? Epithet. Yes, you need to be very correct. So, first of all, write that Pamela, the subtitle is Virtue Rewarded. It appeared in 1740. Officially, the first English novel of English literature, written by Richardson. And I have also noticed that subtitle of any word, There's a literary term coming up here. The subtitle of any work is called as epithet. Epithet. E-P-I-T-H-E-T. What is an epithet? Subtitle. Short. Any work which has, if there is any subtitle of any work, technical language, we call it as literature epithet. So there are many words. This root, epigram is there, epitaph is there, epithet is there, epilogue is there. You name them and you have it. There are many names. I will not go into that, but I will definitely strongly suggest you to go for these words, whatever I have pronounced here, and write them down. Please do remember that as a teacher, I have seen many students getting success in their life, and also unfortunately, I have seen many students not getting success in their life. So the biggest difference that I can tell you from the very beginning is that those students who actually followed up the lecture, they actually did well, and they followed it up with their homework, they revised it, they appeared in tests. Even at the beginning, they were very ordinary, but later on they picked it up. And please do remember, qualifying any exam is like, you can say, you have to be smart enough to qualify it. You don't have to be hardworking that much. You need hard work, of course, in a sustained manner, but you need more than hard work. What you need is the virtue of smart work, and that is, in English, we say that timing your exam out in a better way. You must time out your exam. By time out, we mean that whenever the dates of exams appear, you need to be very alert, and all your efforts should be going in that time-based direction. So what happens that there is no exam right now of English literature right now at this moment. Is in the next maybe coming month there is PhD entrance. So, but for those students who don't have the exam in the next 1-2 months, they need to be extra cautious because they need to cover this up. Then the revision, and by the time, I always say this line, that those students who are reading or studying their syllabus when the form appeared, they are not going to qualify it. Let me be very clear. Those students who have, by the time the forms appeared, they have already completed their syllabus, they are in the process of revision or mock test, they are definitely going to have a strong chance. Even then, I'm not going to say 100%, but they are going to have a strong chance of qualifying the paper because they are already one level ahead of that student who is still preparing for that paper, right? So this is my humble suggestion. So let's move on. So I told you that 4 weeks. So fielding. Now fielding is called as the father of, you can say, can anyone tell me what was the development that fielding led to? Picaresque novel. Fielding is called as the father of picaresque novel. A very important term in terms of our development of novels. Here we are talking about the word picaresque. Put it in capital, put a star over here, and let me tell you, 101% this question always comes. In multiple ways they are going to ask, but this will be a 5-star for me. You can put a 5-star here just for your understanding. That's very, very important, this term, picaresque. The term picaresque is derived from the Spanish word. Now, whatever I'm telling you, all these are questions. This is derived from the Spanish word. The origin is Spanish. Rug. We call it as rug. Sorry, picaro. Spanish word is picaro. P-I-C-A-R-O. Picaro. And it's a Spanish word. And it means rug. What is the meaning of the word? Rug. R-O-G-U-E. There is another word that goes on. That is nave. K-N-A-V-E. They have asked this word also. Most of us are not familiar because it's a little bit difficult word. But rug or a nave. So the pronunciation is this. What do you mean by this word? Rug or nave means petty criminal. Petty criminal. Petty means small level. Okay, criminal. So that means in a picaresque novel, the hero is not exactly a hero. He is actually a kind of anti-hero. Now another word is coming up, anti-hero. Anti-hero is a hero with certain villainous qualities. He has certain negative shades. So that is what you call as anti-hero, and that is what you call as picaro or picaris. Is that is what you call as a rug or a name. So you can just write the exact meaning is petty criminal. Petty, not a big criminal. Is not a man of all negative traits, but yes, he will have some of his weaknesses that makes him a shady character. We also call him as shady. Shady means not clear. Okay, having certain defects. So we call it as petty. P-E-T-T-Y. Petty means insignificant. Okay, and criminal. So generally, the people who ask for money from generally the people because he is hero after all, and hero is defined in any culture as a man of virtues. Let me tell you, if we are showing a hero who is not exactly a virtuous man, he has his weaknesses, he has his faults. So are we moving towards morality or are we moving towards realism? Yes, that is what I wanted to bring the whole class to. Fielding is the father of realism in English novels. Through Picaresque characters, he introduced the element of realism. Now, whenever this word comes of realism, it's a very important word that Chaucer, again Chaucer, because of realism. Chaucer, the father of English literature. Before that, also literature was written. Before him, also literature was being written. But what element Chaucer bring different than his predecessors? Element of realism. He showed, or in English as we call it, he called a spade a spade. He did not mince his words. He was brave and bold enough to say whatever the society is. And that is why most of the critics say that Richardson is not our father of English novels. It is the Fielding or Henry Fielding who should be called as the father of English novels. But my dear students, as per the chronology, it was Richardson's novel which appeared first. So that's why we are bound to say him as the father. But let me tell you the novels, what is the element which bring novels to the English society? It is the element of realism which separates it from its predecessors. Because novels were realistic, that's why they were called as novels. And second and most important thing was that novels have the unity of plot. In novels, the story was not, going apart. It was always getting connected to one point. So plot is anything which has a definite beginning, middle, and end will be called as plot. I'll come to that in our earlier classes. I've already discussed a lot about plot and story difference. It's going to be a very important one. So coming back to the topic, that Fielding actually was not liking what Richardson did. And he famously called, you can say, Richardson's novel as sham or as as portraying not exactly the truth, and that's why Fielding chose a very important term for calling novels. He called it as comic epic in prose. It's a very important term that Fielding gave in his first novel. Now let me bring the first novel of Henry Fielding in the class. And what was it? What was that? Joseph Andrews. The name of the first novel of Henry Fielding was, put it in capital highlight, Joseph Andrews. Okay, this was a very important development again, 1742. 1742. Now, when we study all these things, the challenge appears, practical challenge. Always remember that whenever challenge appears, the solution appeared first. Okay, it's not that the problem came first and then the solution appeared. Always, the solution was there. We invented the problem. Okay, problem is invented. Solution is never invented. Solution was already there. It is we. This is one of the revealing statement. I am not saying it. The great Jean-Jacques Rousseau, a French philosopher, said that we invent problems. Very philosophical statement. We did not invent solution. We invent problems. Solutions were pre-existing. They were always there. So what I'm trying to connect this point to your learning is that we tend to create problem by saying to ourselves, such how should we learn dates? What will happen? So much of data. Our mind immediately rushes these thoughts to us. That's how we will move up. So we are inventing a problem there. We are creating a problem. We don't know, but indirectly we are making a mountain out of a molehill. We are making it a much larger problem. Don't invite such unwanted problems into your mind. Rather, say that. Give yourself the suggestion that yes, it's a date I am going to remember it. When the option will come, I'll put the right circle there. So this is a very important part of your learning. That is psychological learning. This is what you are doing is conceptual and factual. But most important learning happens in your mind. And there is a saying in English that half of the battle is won in mind. I am seeing many of you. There are many weaknesses also in us, even me. I always say that I am the first learner. But why I am bringing this topic to the class today in middle of the class? Because this is where the challenge will come. There might be the age factor, there might be the problems in the home, there might be problems of time. All these things are there. So be realistic and try to form the solution. Okay, let's first of all be aware of the problem, but don't invent it. Don't try to create a new problem out of it. Let's be solution bringers. Let's not be the problem makers. Okay, so I have already given you the solution. The solution to such thoughts is that you give yourself a positive thought. For every negative thought, give yourself 100 positive thoughts. And in this way, you are definitely going to get success. Give yourself the thought, no, I am going to give the time. I am going to have this thing learned in my mind. Although I am poor in memory, I accept. I am going to do a time-based exercise. I am going to ask the questions from myself. And in this way, because let me tell you that whatever we are, for example, if a candidate's age is 25 years, so whatever you are not going to change in 25 days. It's going to take time. But let's make this transformation a happy one. And also, it's better late than never. Let's start it from today only. Giving yourself a positive auto suggestion. Whenever any negative thought comes, be aware that okay, yes, sir told us that no, this is a problem, but I don't have to create it more. Let it be. Let's find a solution. Okay, I have seen the greatest people in the life are problem solvers. They are not problem creators. Okay, so this is my suggestion to you all. Okay, although this thing looks very ideal, but in real life, when we do, it's a challenge. But still, let's take up the challenge. Okay, so what I'm telling you is that Joseph Andrews, this is the term that was coined. This is a novel name that came in 1742, and here he coined a famous term, comic epic in prose. So according to this, novels were written for comic purpose, for entertainment, for pleasure. They should not be written for morality, unlike Richardson. Richardson thought that no, moral novels should be written for morality. Critic did not agree. Critic said that novels should be realistic, novels should be comical in nature. They are there for entertainment. Okay, and then it brings me to another fascinating thing in those novels, that novels may be developed in 18th century only. Why? I told you in my class yesterday that read the facts in the light of concepts. What is the concept? Why not in 17th century? Why not 16th? Why not 19th? Why only 18th? So, my dear learners, the answer to that question is because prose was not developed. Prose was developed by Dryden in the second half of 17th century only. And now because prose was getting its own rhythm and shape, novels appeared. This is the first reason that prose was getting developed. That's why novels developed in 18th century. That's the reason number one. And second, and the most important reason, and the most famous question from novels basics is that novels were the products of middle class society. In England, the society which was developing there was a fastly developing middle class society that was actually interested interested in reading and writing, and they needed something to read, something to read, and something to entertain. And also at the same time, drama as an entertainment, you can say, tool was becoming vulgar. So people were getting bored from drama because now they were literate and they needed some time pass. They needed some recreation. What kind of recreation? Intellectual recreation. There were ladies who were properly educated and they were at home. What to do? They cannot go to drama because that was considered as, as offensive. That was considered as vulgar. So they needed something to read. And there was the scope for novels to develop. So you can write just if you want to write novels, just anywhere not in the chart, you can just write 2 or 3 points. You can make separate, you can say heading, developments, causes for developments. Causes for developments of novel in 18th century. Causes for developments of novel in 18th century. So number 1 is causes for development in 18th century. Number 1, as I told you, prose was developed. Prose was fully developed. Prose was fully developed. Because prose was fully developed, so novels came. That's the first reason. The second reason is, as I've told you, the rise of middle class. Rise of educated middle class. That's the second reason. The rise of educated middle class. And the third and the most important reason is decay of drama. Decay of theaters. Vulgarity was there. So there was the decay of theaters and the source of entertainment. Decay of theaters. So my dear learners, that's why drama was also, novels were also called as pocket theaters. Very interesting term given to novels because novels replaced theater as a source of entertainment, and that's why they were called as pocket theaters. Pocket theaters, very interesting term. You can put the theater in your pocket. That means you can put the novel in your pockets and then you can go wherever you want to go. So 18th century was a development in that sense. It's a very striking development. So pocket theaters, if they ask you, you can say novels. Novels were called as pocket. Okay. So very interesting thing that happened in 18th century was the development of coffee houses. Yes, the coffee houses were the developments or were the, you can say, places where people used to discuss politics. And this brings me to another development of 18th century, the rise of politics, the rise of Whigs and Tories. These were the two big political parties of England in the 18th century, which essentially shaped the literature of 18th century. That is the political parties Whig and Tory. You may not write it, we will write them down, no issues. Try to enjoy the lecture also. So I have told you two things: coffee houses, rise of coffee houses. The typical feature of 18th century, coffee houses were the vibrating places of public places where people used to go and they used to discuss the politics of the state, and also they used to discuss the other, state affairs. So coffee houses, how coffee houses is related to the development of prose, because prose was the language of common people. Common people used to discuss their ideas, and then they used to discuss through it newspapers, through periodicals, and this is where we come to one of the most interesting facets of 18th century, the development of newspapers and periodicals. I'll come to that topic because this topic is still left, but just I am telling you that development of newspaper and periodicals, how it is related to the development of prose. In prose, one was novel and one was essays and periodicals. Okay. So that was there. Now, there is this one question that was asked in LT. Let's say who is going to answer it. The question was conceptual and a very good question. They asked that father of English essays was Bacon. Bacon came in Elizabethan age. And we say the prince of English essays was Lamb. Lamb came in 19th century or Romantic age. So the question was asked that, and then we know that I have told you that prose reformers of 18th century were Addison and Steele. So they asked this question, very important question, that why prose could not be developed in the 17th century? Because Elizabethan age, Bacon developed it a little bit. But why prose could not be developed in the 17th century? Because Bacon was there in the 16th century. There is a whole gap of 100 years, and then we see prose being developed in the 18th century. So what can be the answer? The exact answer is that in 17th century, the nature of prose was not modern. It was Dryden who first of all, created the modern prose. The prose that we know, please remember, the prose that we know today, the English that we read today is developed by Dryden only. Before that, whatever was being written in English, it was heavily Latin in structure. Latin language dominated. If you look at any essay, you must have read any essays of Bacon in your BA level. So you must have seen that how Latin quotations were included, especially by Seneca. Bacon was influenced by a writer called as Seneca, Seneca. So Senecan influences were there. So the answer to this question is that, sir, modern prose was not developed in the 17th century. It was in the process of development, and modern prose was somehow started by Dryden, and it picked it up in the 18th century by Addison and Steele. Please remember that in prose, we don't use the name Pope. Pope is out and out poet. He was not, even if he was trying to write the prose, he wrote it in poetry. That I have told you. So in prose, there were other writers like you can say Addison, Steele, Swift, Defoe. These were some big writers in the first half of 18th century. Okay. So let me close it out. Close this topic first. So the three famous reasons of development of novels. Have you all written it? Okay. So let's come back to the topic again. Let's just quickly introduce Smollett here. Now, Smollett was a Scottish novelist. Right? Please tell me if whether my pace is right or not. Sometimes I get too pacey. Okay, so because this lecture is also recorded, so I request those who are not included in our groups, please ask it from Pargai sir or Pansar. Get yourself added up in our group, and recordings must be, you must try to listen to these recordings. That's why the facility is given. So Smollett is a Scottish novelist. His full name was Tobias Smollett. Tobias. Sometimes they have this fascination with names in the exams. They might ask you the full name of the novelist, Tobias, Tobias, Tobias Smollett. The spelling is Tobias, Tobias Smollett, and he is a Scottish writer, a Scottish novelist. Okay, and he is known as the sea novelist, a great writer of sea novels. C as in SEAC. So he can also call him as a writer of naval stories. They may ask you any way possible. If you know the basic concept, you will hit the right path. Naval means navy, related to sea warfare. Naval, NAVY, navy, navy and naval. So naval stories and sea novelist, both are same. And one more important thing about him is that he also was a picaresque novelist. Yes, picaresque elements were there. Okay. So picaresque, I already told you that in picaresque novel, the hero is a duck, is a name. One more element I would like to tell you about picaresque is that, and please do listen this point as very important point, is that picaresque novels were always be episodic in nature. Bold highlight, capital, episodic. What do you mean by episodic? Yes, very good. Episodic means the plot is loose. There is no continuation of the story because the focus is more on the hero, not on the story. All right. So you can write this word that Picaris novels were mainly episodic in nature. So very important word, episodic. Just have this habit of writing keywords. Don't write unnecessary words. Don't add. Yes, in important lectures, even just because it's not that it's not good to write all those sentences, but it's that you want to focus more here, not on the unnecessary words. That's why just try to write the keywords only. Okay. So episodic, as I have told you, another meaning is loose plots. In Picaris novels, the plots will always be loose, sketchy. All right. Discontinuous narrative. All these are same things. Sketchy, loose, discontinuous, episodic. Okay. Because the focus is more on hero, the development of hero as a character. And let me tell you that there is in the history of literature, we see those characters who have certain shades of darkness. They influence, they attract us more because they are more human. Yes, there is realism. They are shown with, touch of, with that touch of realism. If you keep on showing the characters which are, larger than life, you know, virtuous, then what happens that people, may like them, but they may not, become popular in nature. So the key word in literature is always a struggle, whether you should write a popular literature or a classical literature. Popular literature can, somehow create a sensation, but it is realistic also, and it may backfire also. Yes, there is this problem with realism. It may backfire because people may not like you for telling such kind of truth so in so bold manner. We have seen many novels, they came and they go, they went. They did not survive because the realism was too hard for people to take. So that's also, the second part of the story is that. So as we say that the sword which saves us is the sword which cuts us, right? So that means it is a two-edged sword, writing a realistic novel. Sometimes it may become a popular novel, sometimes it may backfire. Okay, that's why people like reading were there. And people like Junction, they took the sixth option. Okay, so Saurabh was not to be the one who took the same option. He wrote out and out Picaris novel, realistic novels, telling the sea stories, fascinating scene ending novels. Then next one, Stern, who was an Irish. So Stern was an Irish, and Stern is known for as a sentimental writer, just opposite realism. Stern is sentimental novelist. He we all such writers called as romantic ironies. Stern is the new term that I'm giving. Yesterday in PhD class, I discussed this term with the students. Romantic irony. Stern talks about romantic irony, right? So the word romantic means having lots of imagination, lots of, we can say, far off settings, the unreal settings. Romantic is opposite to realism, always remember that. Realism is always dark, realism is always pessimistic, and romantic is always optimistic. Romantic is always, you can say, also unreal. Okay, whenever I use the word romantic, it means unreal. It also, of course, has a more important meaning that of, the elements of love. Okay, so but the two elements that I have told you must be kept in mind. Three elements rather. Optimistic, romantic means optimistic. Second, unreal. These are the key words that you must always put in your mind. Unreal, optimistic, and third, subjective. Please do write these words. Unreal, optimistic, and the third is subjective. Now, what subjective. Subjective is, you can say, when you tell the story from your point of view. When you do not tell the story from somebody else's point of view, you tell the story from your point of view. That is what you call subjective. Say, for example, if I'm looking at a rose and if I write what I feel about that rose, that would be subjective. Again, second option, if I look at rose and if I write how a rose should be, not according to why or what I feel, but how it should be, then that is just opposite, that is objective point of view. Modern writers prefer objective point of view. But this writer, and especially talking about Stern only, Stern writes about romantic irony. That means Stern, both these three elements would be there. He would be writing about unreal situations, he would be optimistic in life, and he would be subjective. So that brings me to one of the most important novels ever written in English history, and that is also called as the precursor of modern novels, and that is Christian Shandy. The name of the novel itself is very, very unique. Christian Shandy. So this novel is called as, please write the spellings very carefully. Christian Shandy. Essentially, Christian Shandy is called as the precursor of modern novels. Modern novels get a lot of inspiration from this work. Christian Shandy, first published in 1759. Please write the years very carefully. 1759 to 1767. 1759 to 1767. 9 volumes. 1759 to 1767. It appeared in 9 volumes. So they have asked many questions like how many volumes it appeared, in what year it appeared, how many volumes it goes through. So Christian Shandy as a novel appeared in 1759, written by Stern, who is called as a sentimental novelist, who uses the emotions of the writer to write his works. And so this week I will conclude this topic, the 4 weeks of novels, right? Apart from 4 weeks of novels, there was this topic called as pre-romantic writers. 4 weeks of novels, after that, I had 1 minute left to talk about as gothic novels. Gothic novels. Gothic novels appeared in the mid-18th century. The first Gothic novel was written by Maurice Walpole, Castle of Otranto. Castle of Otranto, 1760. By Maurice Walpole. Castle of Otranto, first Gothic novel. The word Gothic is very important. Gothic term is taken from architecture, freedom of architecture. It means, you can say, castles. You can say the tall buildings, high pointed roofs. Gothic means tall buildings, high pointed roofs. The term, so remember that in English there are many terms from different fields, like from music, from architecture. This term is from the field of architecture. They have asked this question many times, that from which field the word Gothic is taken from. It's taken from architecture. And what does it mean? It means tall, the building with tall roofs, very high roofs. If you look at churches, cathedrals, the roofs, they are very high. Okay? So that is what you call Gothic. And the word Gothic in novels means horror, tales of horror. Okay? Tales of horror. This was the first novel, Castle of Otranto, and we have also noted down the meaning of the word Gothic, that is tales of horror. Okay. I have also told you once the meaning is what you see, visualize it. And terror is psychological. Okay, so which is more dangerous? Terror, psychological fear is more dangerous than the visual fear. Visual fear may come and go, but psychological fears they kind of destroy lives. We have seen many people, suffer from such kinds of pangs of terror. And there are, in our Nawabi's and Haldwani culture also there are various things that are kind of things also that we try to keep. So all these things are areas of terror. So the father of science of Gothic novels was Walpole, and the father of terror novels, Anne Radcliffe. This is a very important. She is also known as the father of founder of Gothic feminism. Please write his name very carefully. Anne Radcliffe. Anne Radcliffe R.A.D. C.L.I.F.F.E. Anne Radcliffe is known for her novel Mysteries of Udalpur. Very important novel, Mysteries of Udalpur. Mysteries of Udalpur. This is the novel written by Anne Radcliffe. Also, she is the founder of Gothic feminism. I have not written it. Gothic feminism. She is the founder of terror novels. And this is the name of her novel, Mysteries of Udalpur. Okay. Now, we want the last point finally coming to the end of this lecture. The last highlight of mid-18th century was, you can say, two important movements in poetry. One was called as graveyard poets. All these are movements for maybe just further from them. Graveyard poets are the poets who wrote on death, themes of death and melancholy. Now, melancholy means a sort of sadness, prolonged sadness. That is what we call melancholy. So, the greatest writer of the graveyard poets was Thomas Gray, who wrote a heart-touching poem, very important poem, an elegy written in a country churchyard, written by Thomas Gray. We all are familiar with this landmark work in English, elegies especially, an elegy written in a country churchyard by Thomas Gray. So you can just write, just for your information, one writer I just writing it. There will be other also, but Thomas Gray belongs to graveyard poets, poets who wrote in themes of death and melancholy. The key word is melancholy. MELANCHOLY. Melancholy is the key word or key theme of graveyard poets. In literature, always remember the themes. Okay. And the last but not the least was pre-romantic poets. The poets who come or who came just before the legends of the romantics, and they kind of showed or kind of predicted the rise of romantic poets later. So they were also called as pre-romantics or transitional poets. Transitional poets. These are very important poets. They actually showed the qualities of neoclassical writers like Pope and others poets, and they also foreshadowed the coming romantics also. Okay. So pre-romantics, the leader of the group again was Thomas Gray. Same writer would come here also. He was a great pre-romantic. So pre-romantic, you can just write mixture of neoclassical plus romantics. You can just write for your information. Pre-romantics was a mixture of neoclassical and romantics. Neoclassical and romantics. Plus, I have written plus. That means neoclassical plus romantics. Okay. So that in a way brings me to this lecture, to the end of this lecture. Tomorrow's lecture, I am already telling you the topic in mid 18th century or in 18th century, what we are going to touch. Today, I just gave you the overview. It was a very important lecture. Okay, now tomorrow's lecture will be based on the chronology, political, social chronology of writers. Chronology means we are going to deal with all the dates in detail, like which famous works appeared, which famous works came one after another. So you can write the topic or you can just listen to the topic. It's going to be chronology of 18th century. Okay, so that is there. So thank you. Thank you. So with this, come to the end. Thank you.